Obi-Doo, it's everyone's favorite boomer and vintage lens enthusiast. Today we're going to be looking at two items. The Canon EOS 5D Mark II and the Canon Lens EF 24mm 1 to 2.8. I bought this 2.8 a long time ago when I had the XT, which is an 8mm DSLR consumer grade. And a 24mm on a crop sensor like the XT is, you got to add 12mm to it. So you're talking 36mm. It's still a wide angle, but it's not a super wide angle. So this is the Canon EOS 5D Mark II. Came out in like 2008, 2009. And it went new for 2,600 freaking American dollars. I just bought it in 2025 for 300 bucks. It looks like it was in excellent shape, really excellent shape. It's fully operational. It's full frame, 21 megapixels full frame. I have a full frame mirrorless camera, the Nikon Z6, but I figure, well, I want to do a comparison between a Canon full frame, even though it's a DSLR. It does have a live mode where it's a faux mirrorless camera, but I want to see how that pans out vis-a-vis the Nikon Z6. So compared to the XT series or the T series of Canon cameras, the build quality is better. It's a little bit bigger than the T or X series, definitely. It has a bigger screen. But what else does it have? Oh, it has a real pentaprism. It doesn't have these consumer grade DSLRs. They have mirrors up here. They have mirrors like this, and instead of having a pentaprism, they have mirrors. And the image is very much brighter. Let's take this off for a minute. Believe it or not, you could change these screens. You see, there's a tab here, and you can put different screens in. They're full focusing screens. They're not like aerial screens, like in the DSLRs, which means that you really can't manually focus everything. You're stuck with AF, right? So if your lens isn't exactly perfect or matched to the body, then you're going to have troubles, right? And I noticed that a lot. When I use the 24mm f2.8 on these crop sensors, it doesn't seem to focus precisely at f2.8. If you're going to stop down at f4, 5.6, 8, or etc., well, then it's good enough. But critical focusing at f2.8 on these crop sensors, I always had trouble with this lens. So I used it a lot in the beginning, and then I stopped using it because for astronomy, I couldn't focus it properly because those older cameras didn't have live view. Live view didn't kick in until T1, I believe, T1 series. And then you could focus, you could shut the AF off, right? Put on manual focus, use the live view and the magnifier, and then you could focus precisely. Since I just got this camera, and I had this lens for a long time, over 10 years, maybe 20 years, I stuck on an autofocus, and I went to the park, the 1,000-acre park, and I took some shots. A 24mm on a full-frame camera is a super wide angle because it's wider than 28mm and does look more wide angle. The autofocus worked satisfactory because I mostly stopped on the f8, so I didn't see any issues with the autofocus. This thing has a wider dynamic range than their consumer grade product, without a doubt, which sort of I got to get used to. I adjusted the camera as best I could, but that's not to say I'm going to change the parameters later on. It's got some quirks. It has a typical Canon menu. It's somewhat more advanced, and it's equivalent to some of the later T series cameras. The T series cameras are smaller this way and smaller that way. And the T series cameras are lighter than this. So this is a very light lightweight lens, but it still feels like you're carrying a brick around your shoulder. That's why I put it on this white strap. So I went to the park, the Thousand Acre Park. I use that as my reference shots and my benchmark. And we're going to see the slideshow of that. And I really had to adjust pretty heavily for highlights or general brightness. Even though I was shooting at a half f-stop bias under. So it's going to take some while for me to get used to this camera. But so far the results are very excellent. This is actually a very sharp lens. And it's capable of, and it covers a full field. It covers a full frame, if you were sticking a 35mm film camera, it covers that. And this chip is as big as a 35mm piece of film. It's not a crop sensor. So in that respect, I really liked it. So it is a good lens. And I noticed that when I use it on other cameras, like mirrorless cameras, and I manually focus, it's super sharp, even wide open. So I don't know what Canon is thinking. Why? You see, the T-series camera, they may have some strictly combination of buttons where you can adjust the AF bias, but this one has it built in. You could go to a menu, you could leave it on that menu, and then you could adjust the AF either forward or backwards to get to fine-tune the autofocus. The camera remembers that lens, so you have a couple different lenses and you can adjust autofocus like that. Now I have some other lenses I put on it and it's right on the money with no bias, so that's great. So we're going to look at some pictures at the park, the usual stuff, the usual views, but you know, we're checking this lens out on this camera. Now I'm going to run this camera through its paces with some other lenses that I just recently purchased, and I'm going to run some older lenses on it too that I had already, and I'm going to branch out into some other subjects and locales. But for now, we're going to go to Thousand Acre Park and look at the usual stuff, and you can see how does the D5 Mark II handle compared to all the other stuff I got, and this lens particularly, since it's been fallow for a long time, I haven't used it. So saying without further delving into it, why don't we just jump into the slideshow and see what it's all about. I just want to point out a couple cons of this. It is heavy. This is a massive camera, no doubt about it. Like I said, the build quality looks a lot better than those consumer grade cameras, even though it looks like it's made of all plastic. It must have some special electronics and stuff like that in it. Oh, why do I like this camera? I'll tell you why I like this camera. It has the compact flash instead of the SD card. Compact flash, for a guy like me who has a big fat American sausage fingers, compact flash is about as small as you want your card to be. So I like that right off the bat. I had a couple 8 megabytes, but I went and bought a 32 megabyte because the file sizes are pretty large for each image. So that's why I did that. But I have an aftermarket battery that came with it, although they came with a Canon charger, right? Power 2000, they seem to be very reliable. I didn't have any issues with the camera giving me any error warnings about a non-Canon battery. So what are the pros? It has a bright viewfinder. It's like 99.5% of coverage. It does have a live mode, which is useful. It does shoot videos. It does 920 by 1080 videos, and it does that rather admirably. And it has a typical Canon layout. So there's that. But let's just jump right into the pictures and see what that's all about, shall we? Okay, I went to the park, the Thousand Acre Park. I only live 10 or 15 minutes away, and it's a really nice park to walk around. This is early March, and the lake was still frozen solid. And there's a bright sunny day, and it was definitely chilly. And the battery didn't freeze up, and the camera kept on working. I guess it was in the 20s or something, and there's all sorts of ice all over, which I thought was pretty cool, you know, because I like to take pictures of ice. And it had a wide dynamic range from brights to darks, and I just wasn't used to it because these crop sensors, I guess the cheaper cameras, they just don't have as wide dynamic range. So I used autofocus exclusively, and the image, viewfinder image was very bright because they actually used a pentaprism instead of mirrors. And I was very happy with the results. They were bright and crisp and fine detail. And like I said, I had to adjust the highlights a lot and to darken them and make them look decent on the screen here. Of course, I'm going to compare this camera to the Z6. It's a much newer camera. The Canon D5 Mark II came out in like 2009 or something, and it was like $2,500, and I think it was the body only. So the Z6 came out in 2000 or something, and the whole kit was like 2000 with like a lens and everything. But still, we're looking at the image quality. That's what we're doing, and I like this camera. I have a bunch of Canon EF L lenses, and I want to put them on here instead of using the crop sensor. So I'm going to run through that gamut of what's what. And of course, a 24 millimeter on a full frame digital camera is a wide angle lens. It's a wide angle, and you could see that. It gives you broader vistas. It's not to say you could. It's a telephoto lens too, that you could zoom up on something and see fine detail. And this is my usual walk, and here's some ice. I believe it's the beginning of March. There's still ice around, and here's views of this lake that they used for the pyramid power. But of course, it was really an iron forge, which is interesting because this is the oldest thing I know around. Is this iron forge pyramid thing, truncated pyramid, and they have some walls around. They're about the same vintage. And it's the oldest thing around. I live in America. Everything's new. It can't be more than 300 years old. These are probably like 200-ish years old, these walls. And they're letting it slowly decay into nothingness instead of preserving it as, history or anything. And I like to get to places early in the morning because the lighting is more dramatic with shadows and stuff. That's not to say that, when you go there it's overcast or you get a different view of the same stuff. Absolutely. But it's a nice lens. It's a nice lens. You could pick them up used for, $200. And like I said, the D5 Mark II, you could get it for $300, even though since I'm doing this in 2025, you're talking like 17 years old. But, I would consider getting one if you want to get one, without a doubt.